Welcome to Controlling Switch Access with Passwords and Privilege Levels. Restrictions for controlling switch access with passwords and privileges. The following are the restrictions for controlling switch access with passwords and privileges. Disabling password recovery will not work if you have set the switch to boot up manually by using the boot manual global command. This command produces the bootloader prompt, switch, after the switch is power cycled. Information about passwords and privilege levels. Default password and privilege level configuration. A simple way of providing terminal access control in your network is to use passwords and assign privilege levels. Password protection restricts access to a network or network device. Privilege levels define what commands users can enter after they have logged into a network device. This table shows the default password and privilege level configuration. Enable password and privilege level. No password is defined. The default is level 15, privileged exec level. The password is not encrypted in the configuration file. Enable secret password and privilege level. No password is defined. The default is level 15, privileged exec level. The password is encrypted before it is written to the configuration file. Line password. No password is defined. Additional password security. To provide an additional layer of security, particularly for passwords that cross the network or that are stored on a trivial file transfer protocol, TFTP, server, you can use either the enable password or enable secret global commands. Both commands accomplish the same thing, that is, you can establish an encrypted password that users must enter to access privileged exec mode, the default, or any privilege level you specify. We recommend that you use the enable secret command because it uses an improved encryption algorithm. If you configure the enable secret command, it takes precedence over the enable password command. The two commands cannot be in effect simultaneously. If you enable password encryption, it applies to all passwords including username passwords, authentication key passwords, the privileged command password, and console and virtual terminal line passwords. Password recovery. By default, any end user with physical access to the switch can recover from a lost password by interrupting the boot process while the switch is powering on and then by entering a new password. The password recovery disable feature protects access to the switch password by disabling part of this functionality. When this feature is enabled, the end user can interrupt the boot process only by agreeing to set the system back to the default configuration. With password recovery disabled, you can still interrupt the boot process and change the password, but the configuration file, config text, and the VLAN database file, VLANDAT, are deleted. If you disable password recovery, we recommend that you keep a backup copy of the configuration file on a secure server in case the end user interrupts the boot process and sets the system back to default values. Do not keep a backup copy of the configuration file on the switch. If the switch is operating in VTP transparent mode, we recommend that you also keep a backup copy of the VLAN database file on a secure server. When the switch is returned to the default system configuration, you can download the saved files to the switch by using the X-Modem protocol. To re-enable password recovery, use the service password recovery global command. Terminal line Telnet configuration. When you power up your switch for the first time, an automatic setup program runs to assign IP information and to create a default configuration for continued use. The setup program also prompts you to configure your switch for Telnet access through a password. If you did not configure this password during the setup program, you can configure it when you set a Telnet password for a terminal line. Username and password pairs. You can configure username and password pairs, which are locally stored on the switch. These pairs are assigned to lines or ports and authenticate each user before that user can access the switch. If you have defined privilege levels, you can also assign a specific privilege level, with associated rights and privileges, to each username and password pair. Privilege levels. Cisco devices use privilege levels to provide password security for different levels of switch operation. By default, the Cisco iOS software operates in two modes: privilege levels of password security, user exec, level 1, and privileged exec, level 15. You can configure up to 16 hierarchical levels of commands for each mode. By configuring multiple passwords, you can allow different sets of users to have access to specified commands. Privilege levels on lines. Users can override the privilege level you set using the privilege level line configuration command by logging into the line and enabling a different privilege level. They can lower the privilege level by using the disable command. If users know the password to a higher privilege level, they can use that password to enable the higher privilege level. You might specify a higher level or privilege level for your console line to restrict line usage. For example, if you want many users to have access to the clear line command, you can assign it level 2 security and distribute the level 2 password fairly widely. But if you want more restricted access to the configure command, you can assign it level 3 security and distribute that password to a more restricted group of users. Command privilege levels. When you set a command to a privilege level, all commands whose syntax is a subset of that command are also set to that level. For example, if you set the show IP traffic command to level 15, the show commands and show IP commands are automatically set to privilege level 15 unless you set them individually to different levels. Setting or changing a static enable password. The enable password controls access to the privileged exec mode. Defines a new password or changes an existing password for access to privileged exec mode. By default, no password is defined. For password, specify a string from 1 to 25 alphanumeric characters. The string cannot start with the number, is case sensitive, and allows spaces but ignores leading spaces. It can contain the question mark character if you precede the question mark with the key combination Ctrl+V when you create the password. For example, to create the password ABC $123, do this: enter ABC, enter Ctrl+V, enter $123. When the system prompts you to enter the enable password, you need to not precede the question mark with the Ctrl+V. You can simply enter ABC $123 at the password prompt. Protecting enable and enable secret passwords with encryption. Follow these steps to establish an encrypted password that users must enter to access privileged exec mode, the default, or any privilege level you specify. Defines a new password or changes an existing password for access to privileged exec mode. Defines a secret password, which is saved using a non-reversible encryption method, optional. For level, the range is from 0 to 15. Level 1 is normal user exec mode privileges. The default level is 15, privileged exec mode. For password, specify a string from 1 to 25 alphanumeric characters. The string cannot start with the number, is case sensitive, and allows spaces but ignores leading spaces. By default, no password is defined. Optional. For encryption type, only type 5, a Cisco proprietary encryption algorithm, is available. If you specify an encryption type, you must provide an encrypted password that you copy from another switch configuration. Note: if you specify an encryption type and then enter a clear text password, you cannot re-enter privileged exec mode. You cannot recover a lost encrypted password by any method. Optional, encrypts the password when the password is defined or when the configuration is written. Encryption prevents the password from being readable in the configuration file. Disabling password recovery. Follow these steps to disable password recovery to protect the security of your switch. Before you begin, if you disable password recovery, we recommend that you keep a backup copy of the configuration file on a secure server in case the end user interrupts the boot process and sets the system back to default values. Do not keep a backup copy of the configuration file on the switch. If the switch is operating in VTP transparent mode, we recommend that you also keep a backup copy of the VLAN database file on a secure server. When the switch is returned to the default system configuration, you can download the saved files to the switch by using the X-modem protocol. All sets the configuration on switches in stack. 19 sets the configuration on the switch number selected. This setting is saved in an area of the flash memory that is accessible by the bootloader and the Cisco iOS image, but it is not part of the file system and is not accessible by any user. Setting a Telnet password for a terminal line. Beginning in user exec mode, follow these steps to set a Telnet password for the connected terminal line. You might need to press the return key several times to see the command line prompt. Configuring username and password pairs. Follow these steps to configure username and password pairs. For name, specify the user ID as one word or the MAC address. Spaces and quotation marks are not allowed. You can configure a maximum of 12,000 clients each, for both username and MAC filter. Optional, for level, specify the privilege level the user has after gaining access. The range is 0 to 15. Level 15 gives privileged exec mode access. Level 1 gives user exec mode access. For encryption type, enter 0 to specify that an unencrypted password will follow. Enter 7 to specify that a hidden password will follow. For password, specify the password the user must enter to gain access to the device. The password must be from 1 to 25 characters, can contain embedded spaces, and must be the last option specified in the username command. Setting the privilege level for a command. Follow these steps to set the privilege level for a command. For mode, enter configure for global configuration mode, exec for exec mode, interface for interface configuration mode, or line for line configuration mode. For level, the range is from 0 to 15. Level 1 is for normal user exec mode privileges. Level 15 is the level of access permitted by the enable password. For command, specify the command to which you want to restrict access. Specifies the password to enable the privilege level. For level, the range is from 0 to 15. Level 1 is for normal user exec mode privileges. For password, specify a string from 1 to 25 alphanumeric characters. The string cannot start with the number, is case sensitive, and allows spaces but ignores leading spaces. By default, no password is defined. Changing the default privilege level for lines. Follow these steps to change the default privilege level for the specified line. For level, the range is from 0 to 15. Level 1 is for normal user exec mode privileges. Level 15 is the level of access permitted by the enable password. Users can override the privilege level you set using the privilege level line configuration command by logging into the line and enabling a different privilege level. They can lower the privilege level by using the disable command. If users know the password to a higher privilege level, they can use that password to enable the higher privilege level. You might specify a higher level or privilege level for your console line to restrict line usage. Logging into and exiting a privilege level. Beginning in user exec mode, follow these steps to log into a specified privilege level and exit a specified privilege level. Logs into a specified privilege level. Following the example, level 15 is privileged exec mode. For level, the range is 0 to 15. Exits to a specified privilege level. Following the example, level 1 is user exec mode. This is the end of my notes for controlling switch access with passwords and privilege levels.